WTA stars are reportedly furious after Rafael Nadal's shocking gift to rising player Alex Eala ignited an unexpected controversy in women's tennis. What was meant to be a feel-good story, Nadal gifting his protégé a permanent home at his Mallorca academy, complete with a private apartment, lifetime access to facilities, and a youth ambassador role, quickly turned divisive. Initially, the gesture was widely praised. Filipino fans celebrated, commentators applauded Nadal's mentorship, and social media overflowed with admiration. For 2 days, it symbolized generosity and family in tennis. Then subtle signs of discontent emerged. Cryptic Instagram posts from WTA players about earning one's place hinted at deeper frustration, and behind the scenes, group chats, locker rooms, and coaches buzzed with uneasy questions about fairness and privilege. The backlash reflected a long-standing imbalance in tennis, where women have historically faced less prize money, media attention, sponsorship, and institutional support. While male legends like Nadal, Djokovic, and Federer have invested heavily in academies and development programs, women's tennis lacks an equivalent infrastructure. As a result, Nadal's gift to Eala highlighted a painful reality. She wasn't just receiving housing, but unparalleled access to elite facilities, networks, and opportunities that most female players can only dream of. The issue, many argue, isn't resentment toward Eala herself, but anger at a system that allows such extraordinary support for one player while leaving countless others struggling, transforming a moment of celebration into a flashpoint for broader inequality in the sport. Questions quickly followed about the other talented young players at the academy who received no such gift, and about the countless female players grinding through lower-level tours without any real support system. What once seemed like generosity was now being reframed as favoritism, inspiration versus inequality, and the feel-good narrative was on the brink of becoming a full-blown controversy. The moment that truly ignited the debate came from an unexpected source: Madison Keys. Known as one of the tour's most diplomatic voices, Keys posted a seemingly harmless tweet: "Imagine if we all had a permanent home base with world-class facilities. The game would look so different." Just 3 days after the Nadal-Eala announcement. The timing made the subtext unmistakable, and insiders immediately understood the message. This level of opportunity should not be reserved for just one person. The tweet gained thousands of likes, emboldening other players to speak out. Donna Vekic highlighted that hard work should be rewarded, but opportunities shouldn't depend on connections, while Julia Putintseva bluntly questioned why some players received a second home while others, equally hardworking, did not. Fan comment sections turned into battlegrounds, with supporters arguing the gift was personal and critics countering that personal relationships in tennis are often shaped by unequal access and privilege. The debate escalated further when Ons Jabeur weighed in, acknowledging her respect for Nadal while pointing out that Eala's situation exemplified how access to the right networks, facilities, and people can define a career opportunities most young players, especially from developing countries, will never have. Coming from a top player who had succeeded despite limited institutional support, Jabeur's words carried significant weight, sparking widespread media coverage and renewed discussion about inequality in tennis. Throughout it all, Alex Eala remained silent on the advice of her team, but that silence was increasingly interpreted as indifference or arrogance, fueling hostility online and intensifying the pressure as the narrative continued to spiral. Just days earlier, fans who had celebrated Alex Eala were now questioning her character. The Filipino community, once united in pride, began to fracture as some voices suggested that Alex should even turn down the gift as a statement for equality. At the same time, Rafael Nadal found himself facing growing backlash. Spanish media, which had initially applauded his generosity, started asking sharper questions. Why Alex had been chosen, whether other deserving players at his academy had been overlooked, and whether Nadal had considered the optics of a male legend giving such a significant gift to a young female player. Although Nadal's team quickly shut down the more troubling insinuations, the damage was already done, and the story had shifted from one of beautiful mentorship to controversial favoritism. The situation escalated further when Jessica Pegula decided to speak out. As the daughter of billionaire Terry Pegula, she was uniquely positioned to remain silent about privilege, given her access to elite facilities, world-class coaches, and unlimited financial support. Instead, during a Tennis Channel interview, she openly acknowledged Nadal's generosity while arguing that the situation highlighted deeper issues of access and inequality in a sport already riddled with imbalance. Pegula emphasized that while Alex was undeniably talented, the opportunity she received was rooted in being in the right place, forming the right relationship, and having access to power capable of changing a career, factors driven by luck and privilege rather than pure merit. Her remarks sent shockwaves through the tennis world, reframing the debate as a systemic critique rather than a personal attack, though many supporters of Alex saw little difference between the two. The backlash was immediate and intense, with Pegula facing accusations of jealousy and hypocrisy, while the divide within the tennis community grew even deeper. Criticism of Jessica Pegula intensified, with many pointing to her family's immense wealth, and even some fellow American players quietly distancing themselves from her remarks out of concern for the optics of attacking what had once been a feel-good story. Yet Pegula's comments also resonated deeply with another segment of the tennis world, players who had struggled for years without institutional support. Within hours of the interview, current and former players began sharing personal accounts of training in poor facilities, taking out loans to pay for coaching, sleeping in cars between tournaments, and watching more privileged athletes receive opportunities they could only dream of. One Australian player summed it up by tweeting that Pegula had voiced what many were afraid to say. The issue wasn't one gift or one player, but a sport that often rewards access over merit. As the conversation spiraled, the focus shifted from Nadal's gesture to a broader reckoning with inequality in tennis. Journalists investigated financial barriers that keep talented players from developing countries on the margins, sponsors faced questions about uneven investment, and the debate grew louder by the day. At the center of it all was Alex Eala, a 20-year-old who had done nothing more than accept a gift from someone she admired. The pressure for her to respond became overwhelming as silence was increasingly interpreted as tone deafness or indifference to privilege. Her team was split between issuing a carefully worded statement acknowledging systemic issues or staying silent and waiting for the storm to pass. After weeks of sleepless nights, reading every article and watching former supporters turn critical, Alex finally decided she had to speak. Her statement, released on a Monday morning across all her social media platforms, was longer, more emotional, and more defiant than anyone expected. She opened by explaining her silence and rejecting assumptions about her work ethic and worth, making it clear that this would not be a sanitized PR response but a deeply personal defense of herself and her journey. Alex pushed back forcefully against the idea that she was merely lucky, calling it an insult to every sacrifice she had made for the sport, and for the first time publicly laid out the full scope of her journey. She described training 6 hours a day from the age of 12, leaving her family in the Philippines at 14 to chase a dream, missing birthdays, holidays, and graduations, and enduring injuries, setbacks, and moments when she nearly quit. She wrote about living in a foreign country where she didn't speak the language, competing against players who had advantages she lacked, and emphasized that she did not come from money, that her family had sacrificed everything to give her a chance, and that she had trained on subpar courts in Manila long before arriving in Mallorca. Addressing the question of privilege directly, Alex explained that she earned her place at the Rafael Nadal Academy through a merit-based scholarship, not wealth or connections, and that years of relentless work and dedication were what earned Nadal's respect. While her statement was raw, vulnerable, and powerful, it also reignited the controversy, instantly splitting the tennis world. Supporters praised her for defending hard work and perseverance, while critics argued she was missing the larger point, that systemic inequality means many players work just as hard but never gain access to elite facilities or influential mentors. Voices like Shelby Rogers and Jessica Pegula reiterated that the debate was never about Alex's effort, but about a system that privileges access and opportunity. The argument raged for days until Martina Navratilova weighed in, acknowledging the reality of systemic inequality while cautioning against condemning individual acts of mentorship, arguing that the solution lay in expanding support rather than restricting it. Her intervention briefly cooled tensions, but the damage was already done. The tennis community was fractured, relationships were strained, and institutions faced growing pressure to address inequality. Throughout it all, Rafael Nadal remained largely silent, issuing only a brief statement affirming his decision and relationship with Alex, a stance that frustrated both supporters seeking a stronger defense and critics wanting acknowledgement of the broader issues his gift had exposed. Nadal, true to his character, appeared largely unconcerned with public opinion, having made a decision based on what felt right to him and refusing to justify it to angry voices online. His silence, however, created a vacuum that others quickly filled. As player agents began making calls, tournament organizers debated the need for new policies on athlete development and support, and the WTA faced growing pressure to take a formal stance. The controversy had clearly spiraled beyond anyone's control, with no obvious way to contain it. The breaking point came at the Miami Open, where Alex had just won a hard-fought 3-set first-round match that should have been the focus of the day. Instead, a journalist immediately asked her to respond to claims that she had benefited from privilege and access unavailable to others. The room fell silent as every camera turned toward her, and after a slow breath, Alex responded with a firmness that caught everyone off guard, saying she was done apologizing for working hard, done feeling guilty for accepting help from someone who believed in her, and done letting people who had never walked in her shoes decide what she deserved. She argued that she had not created the inequality in tennis, that she was a young player from a country with little tennis infrastructure fighting to survive in a sport dominated by wealthy nations, and that expecting her to reject support as a political gesture was absurd. Growing more emotional, she questioned why similar outrage had not existed when players from rich countries received lucrative sponsorships, wild cards, or advantages based on nationality, and pointed out that the controversy only erupted when someone chose to help her. Acknowledging the toll the debate had taken, Alex reaffirmed her love for the sport and her efforts to support Filipino tennis, before ending with a defiant challenge for critics to watch her prove, through her performance and her commitment to giving back, that she had earned every opportunity she received. The moment Alex finished speaking, the press conference erupted as journalists shouted follow-up questions and cameras flashed, but she simply stood up and walked out with her head held high. The clip went viral within hours, drawing millions of views and once again splitting the tennis world. Some saw her exit as a powerful act of self-advocacy, a young woman refusing to be shamed for accepting help and standing up against what she viewed as unfair criticism. Others interpreted it as tone-deaf and defensive, arguing that she still failed to grasp why her situation symbolized deeper systemic issues. Yet a different group reacted with empathy and admiration. Young players from developing countries who recognized themselves in Alex's defiance, understood the pressure of carrying national expectations, and appreciated her refusal to apologize for succeeding. Their support offered Alex much-needed validation, even as it underscored a broader divide about what tennis should demand of its athletes. Whether successful players should bear responsibility for systemic inequality, reject opportunities as political statements, or have individual acts of generosity judged through the lens of collective fairness. While no clear answers emerged, the controversy unexpectedly sparked meaningful change behind the scenes. The WTA formed a task force to study barriers faced by players from developing nations, retired champions pledged mentorship programs for underprivileged athletes, and major tournaments began discussing scholarship funds for talented juniors lacking access to elite training. Though the personal toll on Alex remained heavy, the debate she never sought helped force long-ignored issues into the open. 3 months later, as the outrage faded and attention returned to on-court results, the experience proved transformative for Alex, strengthening her resilience and sharpening her focus. She responded not with words but with performance, posting the best results of her young career, breaking into the WTA Top 150, qualifying for her first Premier-level event, and defeating players ranked well above her. Her continued success on court became a form of vindication, with every victory and milestone seeming to justify Nadal's faith in her, while also pushing her to think more deeply about how she used her growing platform. Alex launched a foundation to provide equipment and coaching to young Filipino players who could not afford it, partnered with local tennis organizations across Southeast Asia to build development programs, and began advocating more openly for better funding and infrastructure in underserved regions. In interviews, she spoke with greater nuance about privilege and opportunity, acknowledging the advantages she now had while firmly defending her right to accept help, ultimately striking a balance between gratitude and defiance that defined her public voice. She later reflected that she had learned she could not make everyone happy, but could remain authentic, work hard, and use her position to help others. For Jessica Pegula, the aftermath was equally complex. She endured heavy backlash, particularly from Filipino fans, but also earned respect from those who valued her willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. While standing by her core argument, she clarified that her criticism had never been personal and expressed regret that Alex had become a symbol in a debate about systemic inequality that was never meant to target her individually. Though their relationship remained professional but distant, the tennis community hoped time would soften the tension. Rafael Nadal, meanwhile, stayed largely above the controversy, continuing to support Alex quietly without seeking recognition and expressing no regret in private about a decision he felt was right. At his academy, the fallout prompted greater awareness around access and fairness, leading to expanded scholarships, more transparent selection processes, and renewed efforts to create pathways for talented players from all backgrounds. In the end, the controversy forced tennis to confront long-standing inequalities, inspired tangible initiatives to support underprivileged athletes, and exposed how quickly a story of generosity could become divisive, leaving the sport still grappling with unresolved questions about merit, privilege, and responsibility. Ultimately, the debate went far beyond a single controversy or one player's journey, touching on fundamental tensions that sit at the heart of professional sports. For Alex Eala, the gift that was meant to change her life did so in ways she never anticipated. Along with a home at the academy and access to world-class facilities came relentless scrutiny, heightened expectations, and the burden of representing something larger than herself. She gained extraordinary opportunity, but also a target on her back and constant pressure to prove she was worthy of what she had received, leaving open the question of whether the support was worth the cost or whether the opportunity was as much a burden as it was a blessing. In the end, the controversy was never truly about one gift or one player, but about the uncomfortable realities beneath professional tennis privilege, access, and who gets opportunities and why. Rafael Nadal acted on belief and generosity, and Alex tried to accept that support with gratitude, yet together they ignited a debate that exposed deep divisions over fairness and merit. The anger and frustration from WTA players were real and valid, just as Alex's right to accept help was legitimate, and both truths can coexist. What this story ultimately reveals is that there are no easy answers to inequality in sports. Every act of individual generosity highlights those left without support, and every effort to help one person raises questions about the system as a whole, leaving the tennis world and its fans to wrestle with where responsibility truly lies.